Let's join together and go to the Lord in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, as we approach your throne of grace today, we're like the prophet Isaiah who comes in your presence and we say, woe is me. But then we say, Lord, we hear you saying, who shall I send? Who shall go for me? And this collective body has said, here I am, I'll go for you, Lord. And we thank you for their efforts in Moms for Liberty and what they're doing for the children of the United States of America. We pray, Lord, that you would protect them, you would watch over them, you would guide them, you would give them wisdom. And Lord, in a body such as this, with so many people in it, we know that there are those who are going through trials, tribulations, different things. Lord, they're being attacked by the enemy. And we just pray your blanket of protection and love and grace and mercy be upon each body that's represented here today. Guide and direct us. We thank you for the two leaders, Tina and Tiffany. We lift them up to you in prayer. And we ask, Lord, that you would be with them as they lead this marvelous group who's doing great things in our nation. We thank you for the children. And we ask, Lord, because you have said it is for us as a heritage and that you will protect us as we protect them. And we look forward to that. Thank you for this opportunity to be together. Bless this food to our bodies so that we may do your will. In your name we pray and ask these things. And all God's people said, amen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you guys have had a wonderful morning. It has been absolutely phenomenal. I have the distinct honor to stand up here and speak on a lady that has done so much for my home state. And I'm going to get to this in just one quick second. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you to each and every one of you. We could not be here if it wasn't for every single person in this room. Sorry. So, without further ado, in 2010, Nikki Haley was elected the 116th governor in South Carolina. She was the youngest governor in the country and the first minority female governor in America. Now, that in itself is a feat. She is the only female governor in South Carolina history. During Governor Haley's tenure, South Carolina was a national leader in economic development. She's also known as the best in the Southeast, and I happen to agree. The state's unemployment rate hit a 15-year low, saw over $20 billion in new capital investment, and her administration announced new jobs in every county in our state. Whew, sorry. In 2013, her husband, Michael, who was a combat veteran, was deployed to Afghanistan, making her the first governor in U.S. history to have her spouse deployed. Now, I'm sure there are many of you that have had a family member or a spouse deployed, and I cannot imagine what that does to a spouse alone. But to be a spouse in the position of what she did and what she did for our state and still know that her half of her heart was fighting for the country, for the freedoms that we have today, is something that I will forever be grateful for. So the people of South Carolina decisively re-elected her in 2014. Just 2 short years later, Time magazine named her as one of 100 most influential people in the world. In 2016, President Donald Trump nominated her as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. In that role, she served as a member of the president's cabinet and on the National Security Council. As an ambassador, she ensured that the American people saw value for their investment, defended U.S. interests, kept our country safe, and championed for human rights. For her work at the UN, Forbes named her one of the world's 100 most powerful women. And I have to say that I'm in a room full of the rest of those today. After serving in the Trump administration, she founded Stand for America. She continues to fight for policies and candidates that ensure America's freedom at home and strength abroad. And before we bring her out, I just want to share, of all of these accolades, one of the things that I do respect the most about her is that she is a mom that loves. She loves her family. She loves her children. She loves her state, and she loves this nation. And it's not just something that I say from seeing somebody on a screen or being at a meeting and seeing her on stage. But as she was actually getting ready to announce her candidacy for governor of South Carolina, I had the opportunity to meet her, and I didn't know that it was going to happen when it did. So I'm very blessed that I have a family that helped watch my little ones when I had to run around and do some things. And I called my mom and I said, hey, I'm on the way. I'm almost there to pick them up. She said, okay, yeah, we're just sitting down talking with Nikki, getting a few things worked out. And I walk in the door to their business and I went, Mom, you didn't tell me you meant that, Nikki. I would have put some more makeup on. But I tell you what, she has been one of the most genuine-hearted people that I have ever met. To walk in and see her sitting down with my children, with my little daughter at the time, and my two boys, like they were in her own family, you can never put words on that. And it's something that somebody can do from a stage, but when you see it in person and you know that it's genuine, it stays forever. So I'm very happy to announce candidate for president, Ambassador Nikki Haley.
Everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I've got to tell you, there is nothing I love more than being in a room with a group of girlfriends. And we appreciate you fellas that decided to join us as well. The fact that you showed up here, I was talking to the press, and the press said, you're a mom, so what do you think these moms want to hear? And I said, you know what? I said, moms care about a lot of things. It's not just schools. We care about the debt. We care about crime. We care about national security. We care about the border. Moms care about everything that matters that affects their families. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina, 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. We were the only Indian family in that small southern town. We weren't white enough to be white. We weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. And I remember when I would get teased on the playground, my mom would always say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. It's amazing how our country could use my mom's advice right now. And even though they didn't know why we were there, my parents knew why we were there, because there was never a day they didn't remind me, my brothers, and my sister how blessed we were to live in America. My mom started a business out of the living room of our home. 30 plus years later, it was a very successful company. I started doing the books for the business when I was 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that was child labor. I went on to Clemson, go Tigers, and got a degree in accounting. I'm an accountant, not a lawyer. And met my husband my very first weekend there. We dated for 7 years. We've been married for 26. We have 2 children. And I went off and worked in the corporate world for a while, and then I came back home to the family business. And one day I happened to be telling my mom how hard it was to make $1 and how easy it was for government to take it. And my mom said, quit complaining about it, do something about it. I did not know you weren't supposed to run against a 30-year incumbent in a primary. Ignorance is bliss, and once I realized he was related to half the district, the only option was to win. So I went around the district. My husband was driving. I was in the passenger seat. My 2 little ones were in the back seat, and I went around the district, and I said, we've got way too many lawyers at the State House. I think they need a really good accountant. And the district took a chance on me, and we won. When I got to the State House, I got to work. And what we saw in South Carolina is at that time a lot of bills were passed by a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And one day they decided to pass a bill that would give legislators a pay raise. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, it was silent. The ayes have it. Yet to this day, you can't find any legislator that says they voted themselves a pay raise. We had a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican governor, and I was furious. And I went to the Speaker of the House and I said, this is exactly why people don't trust us. And I filed a bill that said anything important enough to be debated on the floor of the House or the Senate is important enough for the people to know how their legislators voted. And the Speaker said, put the bill away. We don't need to have it. We will decide what the public needs to see and what they don't. I remember going home to my husband that night saying, if I can't even get legislative votes on the record, what am I doing here? And he said, then fight. So I went around the state of South Carolina and said, did you know of all the bills passed in the House, only 8% were on the record? Of all the bills passed in the Senate, only 1% was on the record. So if you didn't know how your House member voted 92% of the time, if you didn't know how your senator voted 99% of the time, how did you know who to vote for when you went to the polls? And the people of South Carolina were shocked. To put this into perspective, my first year in office, I was chairman of the freshman class. My second year, I was majority whip. My third year, I was on a powerful business committee. My fourth year, I was subcommittee chair of banking. The year that I wouldn't put the bill away, they stripped me of everything. I could take the well, no one would hear me speak. I could sponsor a bill, no one would co-sponsor. So I ran for governor. And I'm proud to say that now one of the first bills that I signed into law when I became governor is now in South Carolina. Everything debated on the floor of the House or the Senate requires a legislative vote on the record. And we took it a step further and we did it on every section of the budget as well. And I love music, so on the day of the bill signing, I blasted throughout the State House, Pat Benatar's Hit Me With Your Best Shot. When I became governor, South Carolina was hurting. People were down on South Carolina. We were the butt of the jokes. All of our jobs had gone to the textile industry, and we had some serious work to do. By the time I left, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo, 5 international tire companies, and they were calling us the beast of the Southeast, which I loved. We took the unemployment rate from 11% down to 4%. We moved 35,000 people from welfare to work. We put reforms in our correction system, and we now have the lowest recidivism rate in the country. And South Carolina was named the friendliest state in the country, the most patriotic state in the country, and the number 2 state in the country people were moving to. Love you. And then I got the call for the United Nations. And my response, and I'm not kidding, was, I don't even know what the United Nations does. I just know everybody hates it. But when you get a chance to serve your country, you jump. And so we got to work. I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. So we got to work. We pulled ourselves out of the Iran deal. We moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We passed the largest set of sanctions against a country in a generation with North Korea. But the most important thing that we did, we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and we were respected again at the United Nations. Now I'm running for president. And I don't need to tell you how bad things are. You don't have to turn on the news to see it. We are $32 trillion in debt. We are having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. Now, I would love to tell you Biden did that to us. But I've always spoken hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Our Republicans did that to us too. You go look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability whatsoever, left us with 90 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. And did Republicans try and make it right? No, they doubled down and opened up earmarks for the first time in 10 years, passing through 7,000 of them in December. Want to know how they spent your money? $30 million on an honors college in Vermont. $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million for a courthouse in Colorado. And the list goes on. All while 1 in 6 families can't pay their utility bill, 60% of Americans are in credit card debt. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Everybody talked about our education and said, oh, but COVID did that to us. No, we had problems with education before COVID. Pre-COVID, 67% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading or math. Think about that. Just came out a few weeks ago that over 80% of 8th graders are not proficient in history or civics. This week it comes out that 13-year-olds on reading and math is the lowest it's been in decades. Yet we still have so many kids going through critical race theory, which if a little girl goes into kindergarten, if she's white, you're telling her she's bad. If she's brown or black, you're telling her she's never going to be good enough and she's always going to be a victim. You've got biological boys playing in girls' sports. This is one of the biggest women's issues of our time. My daughter ran track in high school. I don't even know how I would have that conversation with her. How are we supposed to get our girls comfortable with biological boys in their locker room? You can't. Think about that. And then recently, John Hopkins comes out with the definition of a woman. Did you see what it was? A non-man. They are literally trying to erase all the progress we have made in all of this time. And then everybody wonders why a third of our teenage girls last year seriously contemplated suicide. We're supposed to be raising strong girls. We've got to fight that fight. No matter what they try and call you, we have to fight for our girls. And can I just say, God bless the Supreme Court. They are making a lot of wrongs right. We've seen it. They've made, they've corrected things on religious liberty. We're seeing that they're correcting things on student loans. But the affirmative action is really important. And the reason it's important is because the liberals continue to try and put minorities down. And the way they do it is they say, oh, but, minority parents don't need to pick the schools for their kids. We know better, we'll pick it. Or you're disenfranchising by having voter ID. Minorities are capable of going to the DMV and getting an ID. We do it every day. So they continue to want to say that minorities can't, and I'm going to tell you, yes, we can. We always have. All minorities want is freedom. Freedom to do and be anything we want to be. You look at if that wasn't enough of the issues that we have, crime's at an all-time high, and then you look at the border. Let me tell you, I've been to the border, and I didn't go and pull a Kamala and come back. I went 400 miles down that border. You're not ready for what I saw. Mounds of clothes, mounds of shoes, paraphernalia, rape areas that the women and girls have to walk through to get by. When you get up in the morning, you get your coffee and you watch the news. When these ranchers get up in the morning, they get their coffee and they go see if anyone died trying to cross the fence. They pick up whatever little kids were left behind and turn them over to Border Patrol. I met with multiple sheriffs. They said before 7 a.m., they round up whatever illegal immigrants they can. They turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol documents them and releases them until their court date years from now. And when you ask Border Patrol about their job, they said, you want to know what we do? We're glorified babysitters. They don't let us do our job. 5 million illegal immigrants. We had enough fentanyl cross the border last year that would kill every single American. Number one cause of death for adults 18 to 49, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. And then you've got our national security situation. Did you ever think we'd look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at us? You've got Russia invading Ukraine. You've got North Korea testing ballistic missiles. You've got Iran building a bomb. But make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. My husband's a combat veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan. The idea that we left Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. So that's a lot of bad, right? It's hard to find anything good. But now I'm going to tell you what I told South Carolinians when I became governor. No more whining. No more complaining. Now we get to work. How do we fix it? When it comes to the economy, let's claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that exist. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We will stop the spending. We will stop the borrowing. We will stop the earmarks, and I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. We will get our financial wallets in shape. When it comes to education, what we knew in South Carolina was if a child couldn't read by third grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we started holding them back. We did reading remediation programs. We brought in their parents. We did summer programs. We started setting our kids up for success. We need to do that across the country. And let me tell you something. We need to make sure we have full transparency in the classroom. We have one job. As moms, we have one job, and that's to make sure that we give our kids the best education, the best opportunities, and freedom to do and be anything they want to be without anyone getting in the way. There is no reason school bureaucrats should hide what they teach, what they say, or what they know from us when it comes to our kids. And parents should be able to decide which schools their kids go to. We don't need a child going to school based on a zip code, based on where they're born and raised. Every child deserves a good education. And every parent deserves to know what's being taught and where they're being taught. We've got to fight for this. This is our kids that we're talking about. Then let's put vocational classes back in high schools. Well, let's start building things in America again. We have apprenticeships all over South Carolina. We teach kids to build the things we make. We need to do that around the country. And when it comes to our universities, we're going to say you either take Chinese money or American money, but the days of taking both are over. We'll get that Chinese infiltration out of our universities. And when it comes to the border, we'll do what we need to. When I was governor, we passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We did a mandatory E-Verify program that required every business to have to prove the person they were hiring was in this country legally. We will do a national E-Verify program. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. Instead of the 87,000 IRS agents, we'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will go back to remain in Mexico because guess what? Nobody else wants to remain in Mexico. So we'll go back to that policy. And instead of catch and release, we will start to catch and deport. That is how we will take care of the situation on our border. And when it comes to national security, we'll let countries know what we expect of them. When I was at the United Nations, there were 2 things that our enemies never wanted us to have. They never wanted us to have a strong military, and they never wanted us to be energy independent. Strong militaries don't start wars. Strong militaries prevent wars. And when it comes to energy independence, we should do all of the above energy. No more going hat in hand to Saudi Arabia or getting dirty oil from Iran and Venezuela. And when I was at the United Nations and we made the push to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, we were heavily condemned for it. And I was so upset, I went back to my office after the vote. And I said, I want you to put a book together. And in that book, I want you to list all 193 countries. The second column, I want you to show the percentage of times they voted with the U.S. and against the U.S. And I want the third column to be how much foreign aid we give them. I took that book and I gave it to President Trump. He lost his mind. He's flipping pages. He's yelling out countries. And I said, I'm not saying that you give foreign aid based on a percentage vote at the UN, but that should be one of the things we look at. Stop trying to buy friends. Stop paying off enemies. Last year, we gave $50 billion in foreign aid. Do you know who we gave it to? Pakistan, that harbored terrorists that tried to kill our soldiers. Iraq, that has Iranian influence that says death to America every day. Zimbabwe, the most anti-American African country there is. We give money to Belarus, who's holding hands with Russia as they invade Ukraine. And yes, we give money to communist Cuba, who America named a state sponsor of terrorism, who is putting up a spy center in Cuba as we speak with China. And the one that makes me sick to my stomach, we give money to China. How weak do we look? When I am president, we will no longer give money to countries that hate America. So we have the solutions. We know what we need to do to bring freedom back to our country, to go and get our country back on track. But the one thing that bothers me the most is this national self-loathing that has taken over our country. The idea that they say America is rotten or racist. I was elected the first female minority governor in history. America's not racist, we're blessed. Our kids need to know to love America. They need to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance when they start school every day. Last week, I dropped my husband off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up 2 duffel bags to load a bus to go to a country they had never been. All in the name of protecting our freedoms. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and leave their families for a year because they believe in this experiment that is America. They don't care about all of this chaos and craziness and drama that we have going on in our country. They just care about defending the country they love so much. And so if they will do that for us, don't we need to fight for them here? Don't we need to fight for our freedoms the way they're fighting for our freedoms there? We've got a country to save. But if we want to save her, we have to have a new generational leader. We can't look back. We've got to look forward. We've got new problems with new solutions. And if we want to save our country, it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage for me to run, and courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what we get in a general election if you don't play in this primary. And personally, I think to save the country, we need to send a badass Republican woman to this White House. So I know that we can do this, and I know by all of you showing up today and showing that you care, we will get this done. But someone asked me why I was running. And I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband and his military brothers and sisters because they need to know their sacrifice means something. They need to know that we do love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son who's going to be a senior in college, and I have watched him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And recently, 78% of Americans said they don't think that their kids are going to live as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. But if you will join me, I promise you, if you join me in this fight, our best days are to come. God bless you, Moms for Liberty. Keep up the great fight. We love you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, my mic's on this side. Thank you. Well, that was great.
Thank you.
And we'll sit at the kitchen table and have a conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Two moms. So
Two
tell me
moms.
about your family. I don't know a lot about your family, and so tell us about your kids. You talked about your husband a little bit. Thank you for his service.
So my husband's deployed. It's interesting because, last time he deployed, he left me as a single mom governor with two small kids. And now this time he deploys and I'm running for president. I don't get it. I don't get it. No, we're so proud of him. We have two children. Our daughter is 25. She just got married. She's a nurse at the Children's Hospital in upstate South Carolina. And our son is going to be a senior in college. Okay. And so we're blessed. I take care of my parents. They're 87 and 89. They live with us as well. So we've got a lot going on.
So your mom sounds like a pretty remarkable person. Tell us a little bit about what her influence in your life has been like for you.
My parents are extraordinary. They left wealthy lives in India and came here with $8 in their pocket because they knew that this was a place where they could raise a family that would really have every opportunity in life. My mom was actually a lawyer in India, and she was picked to be one of the first female judges to sit on the bench. Wow. But because of how challenging the times were, she was never able to do it. So think about how amazed she was to see me become the first minority female governor in the country, or to see me become ambassador, or to even see me running for president. That's why this country is so amazing. I'm not special. This country is special. That's what people need to understand is we are blessed, and my family is proof of that. And I tell everybody, instead of telling our kids they can't, we need to tell our kids, if you work hard, there's nothing you can't do in this country.
So a lot of our moms here have teenagers. Your kids are a little bit older now, but they were teens when you were in the spotlight a lot. And you take a lot of flack, right, when you're in the spotlight. How did your kids handle that? And how did you help them to kind of navigate through reading sometimes some not so nice things about their mom?
When I ran for governor the first time, it was politics in South Carolina is a blood sport. So it was really a messy one.
Right.
And they were in school, so they heard a lot. But they've always known we're a family of service. I think with their dad being in the military, with me being in office, they know. I mean, my son, for the longest time, if somebody said something bad about me on social media, he would go fight back, and I'd be like, put your phone away, because and I would say, if it doesn't hurt me, it shouldn't hurt you.
Right.
But I think it's harder on families than it is on anything else, because they see it, they hear it, they read about it, and politics is so nasty these days.
Right.
But it's part of the sacrifice you do, because you know that if you've got a country to save, you got to be willing to go through the pain and the sacrifice to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so we had Allie Beth Stuckey speak at our summit last year. And she said, politics matter because policies matter because people matter. But I think for a long time in America, women have kind of been shamed out of politics a little bit. You don't want to talk about that, right? We don't talk about those things at the playground or you don't talk about those things in the school parking lot, right? And so now we're coming to a place where so many women are finding their voice and recognizing this government does not work well without us. So advice to our moms who are rising up as leaders in their community, sometimes running for office or supporting their friends running for office.
Don't ever underestimate the power of your voice. It's incredible. We have one life. God has blessed us with one life. Make it mean something. And when I ran for governor, South Carolina was the lowest in the country on female elected officials. Not because it's harder on women, but because women didn't run.
Right.
And so what I will tell you is it tough? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's about our families. That's the reason I'm doing this. I want our kids to live in a strong and proud America. I don't want them to go through the chaos that we're seeing now. So instead of complaining about it, I'm doing something about it. Everybody in this room, you're doing something about it. Keep it up because women are 51% of the electorate. I have always been a fan of women. We have an amazing ability to balance. We have an amazing ability to prioritize. We actually don't have near the drama that the guys have. And we are results-oriented. We're totally results-oriented. If a woman puts her mind to something, you can bet she's going to get it done.
2.5 years. Check it out, right? Moms find solutions. There's never a situation that you have with your child where you're like, oh, well, that's going to be too hard to navigate. I'm just going to let that go. That's not how we operate, right?
Moms are problem solvers. It's problem solvers. We don't sit there and complain about it. We don't have time. It's like fix it, fix it, fix it. And look, I think that's what makes us great. And I think right now, we're used to fixing things for our kids or fixing something in the finances or fixing, an issue at home. Now we've got to fix our bigger home. We've got to fix our country. And we can do this. I have no doubt that America has an amazing ability to self-correct. What we have to have is everybody has to commit to not sit on the sidelines, but do something about it. Because we can save our country. I believe in it. I have faith in that. But it requires every single person to say, yes, I am going to be a part of the solution.
So let's talk about a problem for a second, if we could. Let's talk about the United Nations for a moment. I came across a guide from the NEA that was tied to the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. 17 goals that are radically transforming not just America, but the entire world at the same time. Gender identity coming out of these goals, right? So how, as president, will you help to safeguard the sovereignty of the United States when there's such immense pressure, even from the teachers' unions, to implement these sustainable development goals, which seem to the UN to be a foregone conclusion?
Well, I will tell you, the United Nations is not for the faint at heart. Every day I felt like I was putting on body armor because I knew there'd be a fight that day. I just didn't know which country we'd be fighting. When we were there, we called out every one of those things. I had a team that literally did nothing but watch every move China made, watched if they were doing anything that was socially unacceptable to America. We were constantly fighting for human rights for all people, because I think human rights are so much a part of the American moral fabric. And so you have to call it out, and you can't. It's the time where when you open a door, you can't close it.
Right.
Don't even crack a door if you can't. Look at the biological boys in women's sports. When you open that door, you think, oh, it's just this. It leads to something bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why there's no time to be lazy. You can't be lazy on the things that matter. We have to always fight those fights. That's why I've fought for voter ID. That's why I've fought to make sure that parents could have the schools that their children could go to, and we could do charter schools. That's why we continue to fight for boys and girls sports. That's why we talk about the fact that we have to raise strong girls. We have to keep these at the top of mind for everyone, because if we don't, they will continue to erase these things that make our country great.
So you're running as a Republican, but a lot of the issues that we've discussed so far today aren't partisan issues, or certainly shouldn't be partisan issues. So a message to voters that are listening to you right now, Democrats, independents, what is it that you want them to know? How do we get back to these being human issues and not political issues that are used to divide Americans?
We have to get back to our national purpose and the values that make us great. You know, I saw the protesters outside.
Right.
And I appreciate that, because that's what my husband and every military man and woman fight for, is the freedom of speech to be able to do that. The freedom of speech for you to be in this room.
I don't love the sexualizing children part. I'll just be clear about that, right? So some of it I have a disagreement about, but again, not partisan.
No, but when you talk about the fact, just that they can say it, we don't have to agree on it, but they can say it. Yeah. But the same way in this room, we can say what we care about. And you know, the thing is, stop demonizing people because they have a different opinion. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that without knowing the political bias of anybody in this room, we agree on 80% of the things. It's 20% that we fight over, but 80%. So why can't we at least see results on the 80%? At the end of the day, we're not seeing anything happen in D.C. And you've got families now, we feel like we work for the government. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Government's supposed to be working for us. And that's why when I become president, what I think is hugely important is I will make sure that we reduce the size of the federal government and send it down to the states. I will meet with governors not once a year like every president. We'll meet with them every quarter, and we will give them the ability to do things on the state level, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's benefits, all of those things, because one, that reduces the size of the federal government and it empowers people on the ground. We've got to get back to that. That's the part that I know we can do. We've got the solutions. It just means you got to get to work and get it done.
And that's what our moms are doing at the local level every day. So we're so incredibly thankful for you to come to speak to us today. Nikki, thank you very much for your time and for joining us for lunch.
You know, when they mentioned that this was a terrorist organization.
This is the face of domestic terrorism, apparently.
And I said, well, then count me as a mom for liberty, because that's what I would do then. So, thank you very much for knowing the power of your voice. Thank you for being a part of the solution. We will fix this country. Go to NikkiHaley.com. If you like what I have to say, go tell 10 people. If you don't like what I have to say, shh. Just don't say anything. God bless you. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Take a short break, and I'll be back with an education panel. Thank you. Thank you.